Hi, everybody. If we haven't met yet, my name is Trish, and I work here at Long and McQuaid in the Educational Services Department. I'm coming to you live from Alberta, and my friend Shelley Axelson is joining us from her place in Texas. It is so good to see you, Shelley. Welcome aboard. For
Thank
those of
you.
you who haven't met Shelley yet, we've got her whole bio up on our readingclinic.ca page, so you can read all about Ms. Shelley, Dr. Axelson. I would like to now just turn it over to her. She's going to talk about our concert band stuff for this year.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's good. Well, I was going to say it's good to see you, but I can't see you. So today we're going to talk about some new concert band music. We're going to start with the easier things, grade point 5, and we'll listen to snippets of them, and I'll give you some just sort of some interesting things about those pieces as you're starting to get back to normal, hopefully, and thinking about programming for your kids. One of the things for programming for me is it helps me if I label the pieces. I work with like 3 different categories. One is opener closer, right? So bright, flashy, fun. Then the slower pieces, and then the bigger pieces or the other, which is always great to find a good other for young band. So I might be using that terminology just so you understand. That's sort of my opinion of where this might go on a program. Okay. All right. Well, let's dig right in. So the first piece we're going to talk about, let me move my cursor over, is Groovin' Kings 3. So this is uses We Three Kings of Orient are, but it also uses the Ukrainian bell carol quite cleverly mixed in with it. It has lots of percussion, which is a really great thing. It's in 3/4. So for those of you who are dealing with very beginners, right, this is a 0.5 grade level piece. We all know that 3/4 can be tricky. So just be aware that it's in that, or this might be a perfect piece to use to teach that. So why don't we listen, Trish, if you don't mind, let's listen to a minute or so of it. There you go. And there we have a canon, right? So that's really great as well. And plus any piece I think that features the low guys or gives the lower instruments an opportunity to play something other than sustained root, root of the chord, I think is always really good. And that piece does have that too. So maybe for your holiday concert, that would probably not be an opener, right? Or a closer, it's not quite flashy enough. Maybe the 3rd spot out of 4, sort of that other spot might be a really good place for that. Okay, let's go next to Leap of Faith by Jack Wilds. Now this one is an opener. The word I used to describe this was up. Like it's very flashy. It's a great opener, a great closer. It's also in 3/4, so something to keep in mind. And lots of dynamics on this one as well. So let's take a listen to that, please. I love that we can see the scores and listen to things like that is a great thing. So there you go. And that's the whole thing, right? Because it's 0.5, it's only grade 0.5. So it's nice and short. And you can see on a piece like that, what's great about those sort of young band, flashy openers and closers is that there's a lot of room for tempo, right? That piece could live at a lot of different tempos. So if the kids get it really well, then take it really fast, and all that sort of shiny percussion will make it even more effective, I think. So that's a really good one. And now that was Sleep of Faith? That was Jack Wild. Okay, let's talk about Russ Felt, because this is one of my favorite composers, William Owens. He's been writing forever. Like I feel like I played music of his. He's a band director. I believe he's from Texas, and he knows how to, but so he teaches, or did. I think he's retired now. But so he knows how to write to make his own students sound good. So his stuff, he's a go-to guy, just like Brian Balmage's, right? Brian writes really smart to make pieces sound harder than they are. William Owens is another name I would put on that go-to list. If you're looking for something, a lot of bang for your buck, William Owens, I would add to that list. All right, let's check this one out. So now this one only uses the first 6 notes. So this is a very, very early beginning one. And it has lots of percussion, which we all like, but this percussion I think is a little more interesting than just the typical one. So let's have a listen and take a look at the score. Yeah. Yes. Isn't that great? And you can tell when you look at a score like that, as soon as you open the score and you see how thick, right? And even though the percussion was like really interesting, it was also really repetitive. So once they learn, because this is a 0.5 piece, these kids have not been playing that long. Again, it's a lot of coolness. And also this piece has to do with the Rust Belt, where all the factories used to be, and then how those shut down. So that's that sort of like heavy metal sort of feel to it, right? So there's a lot to do there around the history, right? That little cross-curricular action, right? Now that we all got so good at during the plague, that we're going to hopefully stay good at post-plague, about making sure we're connecting dots between history and all of that stuff. So there's a great opportunity with that piece too. And again, just one more shout out to William Owens, because I think he's pretty brilliant. And let's go next to Brian next, Brian Balmages, who again, fantastic writer for young kids. Wings to the Mind is one of his new ones. Active percussion, of course, because he knows, right? He knows we all have probably a couple more than we really need. So he's always really good about giving our percussionists plenty to do. This piece I think is quite sweet. I listed this as an opener or a closer. And it has a really short B section, but it's a really sweet little piece. So let's have a listen to it. a nice big Tiffany solo at the end, right? Classic. It's great. And isn't that B section so sweet? The dee da 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 dee da da da. How fun would it be to play around with the articulation on that? Every junior high, middle school, or beginner band director with that one measure that has a rest on beat one. There's a little part of my heart cries like, why did you do that? Why a rest on beat one so hard for kids to do? Anyway, so that's obviously a really great piece from our good friend Brian. Now we're going to move more into grade one. So you're going to notice a little bit of an increase in the difficulty, and it actually happens to be another piece by Brian, Ball Mages, Arctic Wars, which has a secondary title, a subtitle of Ride of the Penguin Army. So there's some fun right there. Like, what in the world would penguins have to fight about, right? So that would be really interesting to deal with some science there. This one is really atmospheric, has lots of percussion. But this is what I think we need to be looking for. Those of us who are working with these younger kids who only know a handful of notes. Anytime we can find something that's a little different. I mean, we know that some of our music, there's a lot of sameness there. And how can it not be? They know 6 notes, right? So no judgment. I'm just saying that when you do have an opportunity for something a little different, like this piece, more atmospheric, especially at the beginning, I wonder if this may be a little harder than a grade one. When I listened to it and I was watching it, listening to it a couple of times, I thought, I'm not sure, whatever, you guys can all decide where your strengths are. If it's a 1, it's a high one, I think. So let's check this one out. This is a great other piece. Yeah. So especially the beginning, there was that unison bit there in the faster section. That'll be fun to work on. And I forgot to mention that this one has a key change in it, right? We moved from B flat to F. So that might be the first time your students experience a key change in the middle of a piece. So just be aware of that. And here's a great vehicle to help them learn how to do that and deal with that. But that stuff at the beginning, that's that atmospheric. There's not a lot of young band music that sounds like that, which I think is great, right? Because we're looking for variety on our programs and good rhythm to our programming. So this could be something very different. Plus, how fun would it be to storyboard, if not the whole thing? But serious, like Rise of the Penguin Army, like we feel like we need to talk about this for a minute. And those sort of wave and yeah, all that with those gestures. What is that trying to convey? Right, which would be very interesting for you and your students to come up with a storyline. And then you can email Brian Bowman just because he's a living composer and say, what do you think about this? And he'll probably say, that sounds brilliant, right? He's a great guy. So yes, so I would definitely keep that in mind, Chris, for something a little bit different. All right, let's go now to Slavic Festival. This is like a march, right? It's just more Slavic in nature. It has an optional accelerando at the end, which could be really fun to deal with. This piece, though, we'll see as we look at the score, has a number of accidentals for a number of players. So you're just going to have to decide. That's great when we have one. Like a couple pieces ago, there was like a G sharp for the trumpets, right? And they'll probably be like, what the heck is that? So that's great if it's one, but if you have a piece that has a bunch of new notes, that might be a little too much. So let's take a look at the score and then we can see, you'll decide if it's a little too much at once. And whenever you have a shout at the end, that's going to go one of two ways. When you're teaching young players, they're going to go and be shy about it, or they are going to shout it and it's going to be a funny moment. The syncopation in that would probably be new as well. But that syncopation, this tune is so singable. So the and ba 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 is probably one of the most common syncopations that they're going to see for years and years and years. So because it happens in a singable tune, I would not be afraid of that syncopation because it repeats and it's, like I said, it's singable. So for sure on that one. Okay, that is a great one. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just got to touch my computer. Okay, next is Farandole. This is by a Canadian composer. So bonus, right? I thought one thing I thought was interesting about this piece is how you'll see and hear in a moment how he layers in. He layers in the accompaniment and the percussion, right? So it sort of builds in that way and gets thicker. I thought it's a cute piece. There's not too much for the lower instruments. which is just something, being a bass clarinet, raised as a bass clarinet player, I always kind of had, right? That's always something that I have my eye on, because there were, I would get a piece of music and it would be B flat concert whole notes the entire time. And that just seems cruel. So I always kind of have my eye watching out for those folks, but you can decide for that. This is also a dance, right? So, and I'm always thinking now, how can I do something that's other than just rehearse the music, right? How can we deepen the understanding? So we could teach them this dance. They're going to hate it at first, but then they'll like it because that's what young kids do. And then plus, if you've been teaching in your school for a long time, they already know you make them do crazy stuff and they just go with the flow, even though they're young. There's an interesting brass moment in here that I'm not 100% sure about, but let's listen to it and watch out for the low folks, these interesting layers in, and then the brass moment. You'll know it when we get there. So yeah, it's interesting to me that in the very last bar, the percussion have all 4 counts and the winds have off on 4. So I guess that tambourine is maybe meant to be by itself. So that's something to think about, because it didn't really come out that way in the recording. So in that piece, one thing that strikes me is phrasing, right? Because we all know they're going to go bum ba 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 ba, nice 1-bar phrases, right? And hyperventilating the whole way. So that's definitely something to be able to think about there. But you see that little chunk, right? That started with that brass quintet. It feels like maybe the composer was trying to have a contrasting section because it's a repetitive dance. I'm just not quite sure that fits perfectly. But it is a nice brass feature, so something to think about with that. So next, we have Beginner's Rock by Randall Standridge. Trish and I were talking about this one before we started recording. It is about as cheesy as you can get, which I am here for, especially I think this year as we're trying to get our kids back. I think the audience is going to love it. I think the kids are going to love playing it, but it is, you'll see in a minute. Lots of percussion, of course. Randall Standridge, I always do that. Randall Standridge was a band director. If you don't know this, he doesn't anymore. He's not anymore because he writes so much. But when he was a band director, he taught beginners and he loved beginners. And he wrote this piece, the sketch of this piece, as the big end of the year. Yay, band. We're not, beginners kind of thing, which is why it's called Beginners Rock. Like, get it? Beginners. Yeah. Okay. So lots of percussion. It's a drum set, an optional drum set part if you have a student that can do that, or you can break it up into others. There's a percussion break in it. And it's very like 60s Austin Powers kind of rock, which I am here for it. Unapologetically. I am here for it. I think everybody's going to love it. So this is a closer. Please don't try to play a slow piece after something like this. This is a closer. All right, Trish, let's hear it. Right? Right? I'm like,
I will admit to chair dancing and say in my own defense that there is good cheese. I do like this piece. It's just the time and the place. I
yeah,
love it. It's fun.
exactly. Yes, ain't nothing wrong with cheese, right? Everybody loves cheese.
It's
And
true. And
they're going to love playing it.
and we are in that point,
yeah,
right? Where like you want everybody to have as much joy in your band room right now as you can get them to have, whether they've been there before, this warm welcome back. Absolutely. This is a great piece for that.
I agree. I agree. A little bit of sweets just to get them to eat, right? And and I mean, I'm a huge fan of this composer because he's been making my
Me too.
groups sound better than they are for a lot of years. And so I don't think I've corresponded with him when I've done his pieces before. Great, great guy. So I think he knows. He knows why he wrote this. And I don't know, I think it's great. So you guys consider that one. That would be a closer. Especially like Trish was saying, if we come back and you're doing your first live concert and we're ending with this and you let people get up and dance, oh my goodness, that'd be amazing. So, all right, enough of that now. Let's move on. We're back to Brian again, Ball Mages. A piece called A Scottish Festival. So you have some folk here. Active percussion, because he always does that for us. He and William Owens always make sure. There's a key change in this one from B flat to E flat. which might be a good opportunity for teaching, or a reason maybe not to pick this one if your kids aren't there yet, or you haven't dealt with that key very much yet. I think this is probably an opener, I think, kind of piece. It's not super flashy, but it would be a nice, attention getting opener. For me, it doesn't sound particularly Scottish, but the drums, I think, really bring it in. And so let's take a listen.
I guess hitting play is the right answer there.
It's really cute, isn't it? That's a really cute piece. And I didn't notice this before, but this would be a perfect piece to introduce them to cut time without ever talking about cut time, right? Because you could rehearse and perform this piece. And of course, we're not going to go bing, bing, bum, bing, bing, bum, bum, because it will never live. It'll always be slowing down and bodying down. But of course, you have to start it that way and do that. Like, let's rehearse this section and you're in four. And then when they're playing through a section, you just start floating into two. And then you introduce cut time on a different piece. And they're like, oh my goodness, what are you even talking about? What do you mean cut time? What? Guys, you already did it. Remember that time? So to give them the experience with it without introducing cut time, that could be a perfect use for that piece too. Plus, it's adorable, clearly, right? And again, Scottish, talk about the Scots. Okay, next we have In the Cool of Evening, Matt Neufeld, who was a composer I did not know.
Funny story, Dr. Axelson. You've probably seen his bands in Winnipeg at Optimist.
Is that right?
Yeah, same Matt.
Fantastic. And you know what? This is just a total snafu moment for me, because I have my notes in an Excel sheet and that cell is blank. I have erased my notes on this piece, but I do remember that this is Cool of the Evening, right? And he's Canadian, I'm remembering. And his favorite time of day when he goes camping, right? That's what this, so it's a slow piece and a calm piece. And I remember liking it very much. I just don't remember why, because I deleted it all. But it's a really lovely, let's listen to it and then we'll have more to say after. that lovely? That is so calm. One thing I do remember that I put in my notes, that comes in at about 3.5 minutes, which is kind of on the long side, especially for a slow piece at this price point, at a grade one. So that could be a reason to do it, right? To build up stamina, especially. But then again, maybe this piece needs to wait a year because of stamina. Do you know what I mean? Just something to keep in mind, because that is on the longer side, as all the band directors watching this are well aware, what that might sound like those last 10 bars when they get tired, right? So, but just a lovely piece, and it's not so much about camping. It was just the picture that I remembered of the campfire. So, see, I can remember things, not so well. All right, let's move on. So we were in the cool of the evening. Now we're going to have a cool breeze. This is Chris Bernatas, a name familiar to many of us. This one is all about swing. So this is a piece where you could teach your whole band about how to swing. There are written out solos, or you can allow them to improvise. The solos are in, I believe, the tenor sax and the trumpet, which for me, everybody would get a turn in rehearsal, right? Not necessarily performance, but the first person that I would hope would raise their hand would be my bassoon player, right? Or my horn player. Like, take a little ride, and have some, or just take the solo that's in already, the trumpet or alto sax part, write it out in every key, and bass clef, right? So just the 5 C, B flat, E flat, F, and bass clef. And then anybody could play it in rehearsal just for fun. Let's take a few minutes. Who wants to take a ride or do your own solo? Huh? Like, that'd be amazing. So, and I hope one thing that I've been talking a lot about since COVID happened and we were all online, how I learned, and a lot of my colleagues learned, that we could have been doing better all along, because we weren't really talking about improvisation or composition. We weren't incorporating that into the large ensemble experience. And we should have, because we were kind of teaching to the test, right? Just rehearsing and performing. And we could go deeper. And this is a piece that helps that, right? Improvisation, solos, all that stuff. All right, I'm done preaching now. Let's listen. It's fun. It's a swing. Cool breeze. So yeah, so great fun, right? Lots of opportunities for lots of different solos. Interesting part for the lower instruments. Um, I thought it was funny though when that part that's repeated, that it's like second time only for the high woodwinds, and they played the first time. They missed that note, right? That's why we never trust a recording. Not with our lives, right? We use it as reference, and we are grateful to have it, but we gotta watch those scores, right? Because there's mistakes often. Okay, so this next piece, I'm pretty sure it's my favorite one, and in this sort of for the younger kids, it's still a great one. It's called The Magic Mirror, and it's by Robert Buckley. This one, part of his compositional process on this was playing with contrary motion, and you'll see that it's not like the whole world is about that though with this piece. I think the most interesting part about this piece is it's just so atmospheric. It's like almost hypnotizing. And this would be another cool piece to like storyboard with the students, because it's just unusual sounds. Like, what does this make you think of? What are you thinking about while you're playing this? Or what do you see in your mind? Um, so I think that's really good. And I will say even further credit to this composer on this one, because the percussion, it's a slower piece. So of course it's not very percussion heavy, but the percussion is very interesting. Not just the typical stuff, and adds a lot of, you'll see. Let's listen to it. I think this one's my favorite one. Isn't that fantastic? I mean, there are not many grade one pieces that sound like that. And it's interesting, and it's so repetitive, but just not too much, right? It's enough to lull you in. And when I was looking back, I didn't find, Trish, I didn't see in the score a backstory, or he didn't give us anything on that.
Knowing Bob, there probably is a really great backstory. I can dig into that, but also I could make you all read program notes on a link somewhere. But yeah, there's probably a great backstory on it. I'll do some digging.
Well,
Um,
you know what? You don't have to, because I mean, if we choose this piece, we can do it. But the thing about that is that with composers, like it can be very helpful, especially in something like this that's so other, if the students have something to think about. But this composer, if he didn't put it in the score, there's a reason for that, right? So maybe,
I'm just gonna reopen that link and look because now I'm curious.
yeah, because and I'll make the point that sometimes it's better not to have a backstory because then your kids can make it. Spend
It's true.
time talking
But
about it.
this backstory will totally illustrate the thing for you. Looking at a perfectly still body of water, images appear right side up and upside down at the same time. And you totally hear that the second you hear that.
Yes, yes. I do remember that line. And then he starts talking about the contrary motion, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so water stillness. But don't be surprised every time I hear it, that da-dee-da-dee-da. If he went to la, he would have directly lifted Beauty and the Beast. So your students are going to hear that and go, this sounds like Beauty and the Beast, and they're going to be right. So well done. I love that piece. I'm buying that one for sure. All right. So that's now we're going to move up another half a level. We're going to move to 1.5. Okay. So we'll see a little bit more difficulty. We're back now with Randall Sandridge. Okay. We wish you a scary Christmas. So you know exactly what it's going to be, right? It's going to be Christmas tunes in minor, which I kind of love. But a couple notes. It has a narrator at the beginning. So we're getting a little cheesy, but for a Halloween concert might be great. Or no, it's Christmas. Anyway, so narrator at the beginning, lots and lots of percussion, cool effects that for the students and the instruments. But this piece uses a synthesizer, right? So just be aware of that and notice that in the score. Hopefully you have access to a synthesizer, but if you don't, then you might want to just know that. Okay. So if you have a pianist in your group, synthesizer time. So let's have a listen. I kind of dig this one.
On Christmas Eve's past, before all would retire, with the winter winds shrieking, they huddled close to the fire. And ghost tales they told long into the night. So Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good fright. Right? So there you go. You knew it was going to be that, and you loved every minute of it.
So, and so will your kids. But one thing I think is interesting to point out, so that's the first 1.5 we've listened to. Look at all those accidentals all of a sudden. Between 1 and 1.5, that's why there is a 1.5, because the difference between 1 and 2 grade is pretty big. So I'm glad publishers have put in, and not all of them do, but this 1.5 can communicate a lot to us band directors, saying that it's closer to a 1 than a 2, but you see that there are quite a few accidentals in that one, so something to keep in mind. And that synthesizer part, which is actually, you need a pianist. You have a pianist in your group, you do. And they'll be able to handle all those accidentals because they've probably been studying for a while. But yeah, that one's cute. I like it. All right, let's go on to another great 1.5, Critical Call. This is a new composer to me. I did not know this composer is Gerard Hall. Yeah. So I was really interested in this one. It's based on like 911, like in the States, that's the emergency. Is that the same in Canada, Trish? We're all 911. So he used like the 911. So he's quite a young composer. So he's obviously still experimenting, right? So he uses this 911, which I think is interesting. He does a lot of clusters, chord clusters, which would be new and would never happen at grade 1. That happened here at 1.5, which is what contributes to this being a 1.5. It also has a really important marimba part. So if you have a really hot mallet player and you're looking for something to give them something extra to do, it's got a pretty intricate part for grade 1.5. So let's have a listen to this one. There you see the 911. So interesting, right? A little different. So I mean, I think I'm going to watch this composer because I think he's got some really interesting ideas, and I'm anxious to see how he develops because that's a different kind of piece, and that's what we're always looking for, right? So you see that marimba part; it's really repetitive, but because it's so repetitive, if you have like a really hot shot player, this would where you could maybe introduce 4 mallets or maybe at least 2 mallets in their dominant hand. They might not be ready for that in both hands, but it could be easily divided between 2 kids. You can see that, right? They'll just have to stand really close together. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so this next piece is by Laura Estes, another new composer to me. I don't know how to say this though, Trish, help me.
I think it's just suivant.
Okay, will you say just because you can
Oh,
tell
sorry. It's not French, but it looks French, so that's how I've always read it.
Okay, I thought it was French, which is why I just didn't even try because I only speak English and Texan. So no French for me. Okay, so Laura Estes, yes, we said that. This for sure. So I'm recently moved to Texas, but I always did a Christmas concert at a local church for charity where people brought presents, and it was a really great thing. This, if I get to do that this year down here, figure it out, I'm doing this piece. It's hard to find cool Hanukkah pieces, right? So I found one called Hanukkah Dance, which I can't remember who it's by, but it's really, really short. This is a good one. It's got hand clapping in it. It's a cool, let's listen to it. Yes. That's a keeper for sure. And you couldn't hear the clapping very well on the recording. At least maybe it's just over Zoom. But the first time I was listening to it and watching it, I was doing the clapping because that's just who I am. Sorry, man nerd. And it's cool. And the kids are gonna like. So it gives that little something extra as well. And it's nice to have a longer piece too. So plus it's just, that's a good one. So let's all keep that one. If you get to do a holiday concert at your school, that's a really, really good one. Oh, that other one is if you have younger students and need like a grade 1, I think it's by Schaefer. That other one, Hanukkah Dance. So just make a note of that. Okay, so the next one on the list, we're not going to listen to if it's okay. It's our good friend Michael Sweeney has written another Celtic air and dance. This is his 5th one. You already know what that's going to be, right? It's going to be great, and it's going to make your kids sound good and well arranged. So I thought, just in the interest of time, you can listen to that one on your own. It's a thumbs up for me, and I'm sure from Trish as well. But since we all know his earlier ones, for me, I'm number 2. We all pick one. You get one. For me, it's number 2. If Trish is a 3, that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, so there's another one out there available. So check that one out. Next is Carol for Coventry. This is our old friend Robert W. Smith, who I haven't heard much from in quite a while. One of the things I like about this is that he layers into a woodwind quintet, which, I mean, come on, at a grade 1.5, that's cool. You'll hear a lot of his stuff though, right? Because we know a lot of his music. So he writes smart, it's thick, right, for protection, I assume. There is a section between 3/4 and 4/4. So you know your kids are going to want to be ready for that. But for a holiday piece, right? Something a little different. Let's have a listen. Yeah, it's nice, right? His music is satisfying. He sets you up and then he gives you exactly what you expect, which is one thing I really appreciate. I love those woodwind spots though. Those 2 spots with that little woodwind quintet. I mean, that's really great stuff. I mean, that's your woodwind players. They would be all about that. And I would keep it a quintet, right? Because it's just so beautiful. So, plus when you have a long note theme over active woodwinds, like that's just classic, right? Classic stuff. So, okay, wonderful. So let's move on now. Now we're going to talk about Storm, and this is a composer I have known for a bit. Soon-Hee Newbold has been writing for a while. This one, it's a slow piece, has a very important bell part. I'm thinking this actually might be graded too high. This might actually be a one in real life. So those of you who are watching this and thinking, oh, 1.5 is really pushing it for my kids, I think this one might actually be more of a one. That's just my opinion. And Trish, you know better with all of that stuff. So maybe we'll listen. I don't think we need to listen to the whole thing because it is a simple, sweet little slow piece. But let's get a taste of it, and then I'd be curious to see if you agree that it's a one. What do you think, Trish? Sorry, I referred to it as a slow piece. My brain's getting a little scrambled. I was I was looking at the wrong cell on here. Obviously, it's called Storm. Had a moment.
I don't necessarily think you're wrong about level, but I mean, it's level for me. I find it really subjective, and I think a lot of it often depends on the kids in front of you. And I think we're all kind of guilty at different times of getting hung up on the number on the cover. And you may have something that is a piece that is, 85 bars of delightful level 2 and 5 bars of level 4,
Yeah.
right? So there are things like that. They're going to happen in all of them. But I think you're right in saying that, if you're kind of in the level 1 range, this is not an unreasonable ask for your kiddos to play. Mind you, that said, if you're in the level 2 range, this might be an easy thing to give them immediate success, etc. And Soon-Hee is primarily an orchestral writer, and I believe this was her first concert band piece, which I think is really cool.
Oh, really?
I might be wrong, but I'm thinking at this level anyways, the only thing that I've seen of her is for concert band.
Okay, well then I must know her for orchestral stuff.
You
That I know
must,
because
yeah.
I've seen her name. I don't know
Oh,
where.
totally.
So yeah, maybe it was through orchestra stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe she's written some harder stuff.
Higher level things, and she might well have. It's just I remember bookmarking that in my head because I'd seen so much of her orchestral work, which is funny because I do very so little with orchestra. I'm still learning that, right? Like string
Yeah, me
orchestra, what's
too.
that? I'm learning. Right?
Yeah, absolutely,
But yeah,
absolutely.
so that's why I think she brings a kind of different voice to it, much as choral writers do when they're writing for concert band. There's just something intangible that's different about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, I want to. Let's keep going. There was something you had said just a second ago that I agreed so strongly with. But this is why I interrupt people all the time because if I don't say what is in my mind, I have like a 3 to 5 seconds and then that's gone forever. So it'll come back to me though, because that's how it works. And because you said something that I thought was very smart and I wanted to agree, but whatever. Everything you say is smart. Let's go on. Circuit breaker. So we're back with Randall Standridge. Okay, this one has electronic, like with tape. For those of us of a certain age, it was like band with tape. And it was like a cassette tape that you put in and you took your pencil when it fell out and you had to remember those. Oh God, I'm getting distracted. Here we go. So yeah, so this has an electronic component, which I think is so unusual. It's also, okay, this is all happening at grade 1.5. So check this out. Not only do you have electronics, a fixed media, they call it now, because whatever. Lots of percussion. Sounds to me like marching band video game music, and it's in 5/4. But it's not just in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in 3, 3, 2, 2. At grade 1.5, and they can totally do it because it's so repetitive. All right, I'm talking way too much. Let's listen. Pretty much I think that's good. It pretty much just goes like that. So there's a lot being learned, and it could be intimidating. Like, oh my gosh, first of all, 5/4, problem number one. But the fact that it's divided 3, 3, 2, 2, problem number two. Mixed media, a lot of moving parts on that, but it's so repetitive and it's a groove, right? So I would not shy away from that because I think he's smart about it. And you could see on when Trish shared her screen on that, he has the ranges for whatever your instrument. He purposely made all the ranges smaller, and everybody's in their money register, right? Their lower half, so that notes are not an issue, right? So it's all about the new stuff and the rhythm. So I think that's really, really clever. Take that element out. So, well, of course.
And it's one of the ones that he did both in full concert band and in adaptable. So depending on your scenario, some of the things on the concert band list are also available in an adaptable format. So that was one of those things, and I love that. I like the electroacoustic movement as part of the bigger picture. I think it's really cool. So I think being able to expose kids to that at that age, or if you're in a community band, your newer musicians to that at that point, I think that's fantastic. So anyway, we're here to listen to Shelley, not me, but that's what I think.
Well, the only reason I think we have to be careful about that is we're going to forget that we're being recorded, and 3 hours are going to go by, and we'll both have a big glass of wine instead of our Diet Cokes, and we're going to be talking about repertoire. Nobody needs to see that.
It's true. Nobody does need to see that. Okay, I'm turning it back over to you. Let's make this work.
Fantastic. In fact, that was Circuit Breaker, so we just have one more 1.5. And it's called The Hope of Tomorrow. And I don't know this composer. Wada? Is that how it's pronounced? Wada?
So far as I know, it's Nao Wada, but I am absolutely open to correction if I am wrong. And I believe that he actually is a Japanese Canadian, or is Japanese and living in Canada, I believe. If I am wrong, I am very open to corrections, but I feel like those are things I know because this is not the first of his works that I've known of. So
there you go. Right. Excellent. So this is just a nice melody. I think it's a slow piece. I didn't write that down, but my notes indicate, because the percussion is quite limited. And I talked about how nice the melody was, and it's in 3/4. So my guess is that this one is probably a slower one. But this is a new composer to me, and I was very impressed by this one. So let's have a listen. The only thing that makes me nervous about the piece is that last sustained unison. Why did you have to do that? Why you gotta be mean like that at the end? I remembered what I wanted to say that Trish had mentioned before. We were talking about Storm and how whether or not it's a 1 or a 1.5 or whatever. And you rightly said, and I just before, because this is, we're going to stop, we're going to pause here in a moment. So not everybody's going to see the other video that we make of the harder pieces. That I agree with that completely. I think when you're programming your concert, we talked about the rhythm with the openers and closers and others and things like that. I think you want to think about absolutely always have a piece that's too easy. Always have a piece that's too easy, because that's where you're going to be able to take deeper emotional dives. It's almost always the slow piece. It should be too easy. One piece that's right at the top of their ability level. So we're going to teach them. That's where we're teaching them the new stuff, and we're challenging them and we're growing them. The other two pieces, or however many one you're doing, right in their wheelhouse, right? We don't want to have more than one piece that's a stretch. And even that their head should touch the ceiling, but not poke through, right? So give it little bites. So that's, I just wanted to say that just as a philosophy of programming. I think you'll find your concerts are successful. You don't have to pull pieces at the last minute. If you keep that sort of format in mind, it's worked for me for 700 years. So I offer that as advice on that. So thank you, Trish, for asking me to come and talk about repertoire. It's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being available to do this. So, I know you had a cross country move this year. I know that you just finished doing the U of T conducting symposium. So, I am super grateful that I managed to capture a little bit of your time to do this because, as you say, I mean, you and I could sit down and talk about repertoire for many, many hours and have, and probably will continue to do so. So yeah, so I'll draw this session to an end. So this was our level half to 1.5, and we're going to go jump into some more advanced works in our next session. But just before we go, I did check the bio for Mr. Wada, and he is definitely Japanese. It doesn't say where he's living at the moment. And I had made the assumption that there was a Canadian connection because he had a couple of works come out through Eighth Note, which is a Canadian publishing house. So that may not be accurate, but definitely Japanese composer, very prolific, lots of great works out there. So there we are.
I've now addressed on the list now. It's a nice beat. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, have a delightful rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next session.
Bye.